welcome to Pharma Mooc's Industry Insight series once again. My name is Nuala Camlin and today I'm here with Dr. Alice Redmond, who is Vice President with Commissioning Agents here in Europe. And Alice is also the current President of the PDA Ireland chapter. You're very welcome, Alice.
Hello, Nuala.
Alice consults with many of the top global pharma companies in the area of commissioning, validation or verification depending on your approach, and regulatory compliance. And Alice is going to share with us some of her insights in terms of the companies that she's working with and the challenges that they face at the moment. So as you know, Alice, much of our research here at DIT is focusing in on Q8, 9 and 10 and implementation for the industry around that. So from your perspective, what do you see are the top challenges that are facing the industry in terms of implementing the science and risk-based approaches?
Okay. Really good question. In terms of some of the biggest challenges is there's been a change in the roles and responsibilities within the projects and within the companies, whereby in the past it was very much we had, I suppose, validation and a quality team at the end, and they were marshalling over the rest of the project or the rest of the organisation. In terms of the science and risk-based approach, it very much requires that the designer of a project, the designer of a facility, works along with the engineering teams and integrates into the overall project. And some of the issues have been that I suppose the integration of the knowledge and the transfer of knowledge across the life cycle has been very, very good. So through the ASTME standard and through some ICH Q8, 9 and 10, we're now in a position whereby ICH Q8 looks at the whole, I suppose, product and process knowledge. And it's only a few years back that companies didn't really undertake process risk assessments. The process risk assessments give you the foundation for your qualification process and the validation process from the beginning, and being able to understand what your critical process parameters are, what your attributes are, and in a position to be able to focus on what's important at the latter end of the life cycle. For a lot of companies, moving from a kind of a policy of going through and I suppose commissioning everything and validating everything and then repeating everything again in process validation, the science and risk-based approach is giving them the segue and the ability to focus on what's important and to understand that, for people to have that understanding and to go forward with this into the life cycle.
And in terms of something you've touched on there, Alice, again, another area that we're focusing in on at the moment is the whole issue around knowledge management within across the life cycle within the pharmaceutical industry. So in terms of that process understanding and that foundational knowledge that you talked about, how are people transforming the way that they formerly captured that knowledge and are now communicating it out to the troops?
Okay. I suppose there's a huge effort to have process information, I suppose, captured, and that's always been there. But the problem and the issue has been that information hasn't been manifested itself into a usable format. So companies are trying to either, I suppose, work with their R&D groups and the development groups to get better interaction between them to transfer that knowledge, but also it's I suppose a combination of knowledge management type tools, and I suppose there's lots out there. The companies are trying to develop to be able to data mine and to bring the data from both the development and also their operations right through that they can use for the purposes of analysing deviations and kappas. And then even in terms of product and tech transfer, moving from facility in one location to another, that they can use this data to consolidate and to streamline the way they do the transfer. The industry at the moment is trying to understand what statistics are required, what way to analyse data, and what way to, how much data do they need to actually bring that forward and to use that data to either reduce the level of testing or otherwise.
And are you seeing an increase in the number of SMEs who have that statistical analysis capability? Are you seeing an increase in the number of those that are coming through the industry?
I think there's, with statistics, a lot comes down to what tools you use and how they're used. In terms of the number of SMEs, I think there is an increase. I think I would see in teams I'm working with that there's a focus now that somebody has to have an understanding of statistics. If they don't, that's something they come and acquire, or they train people into that role. But it's also, again, of having somebody, I think with the statistical analysis, the requirement to have somebody independent who can look at that data and understand it and really see the trends that are there and not focus the data to a particular facet or understanding that they particularly want.
That's something we've seen discussed at a recent industry forum that we were present at. In terms of the key projects you see then, what are the top priorities that companies are focusing in on in terms of their implementation of these science and risk-based approaches? What are the top projects you're seeing coming through?
Okay, the top projects, I suppose let's talk a little bit about quality risk management. I suppose that's been a hot topic for a terribly long time. And I think a lot of companies focused initially on let's get a tools SOP in place without really the whole understanding as to how that can be used, not only from a science and risk-based approach, but also in terms of the overall PQS. So some of the issues we're seeing is that companies will have an SOP that says we will do an FMEA, and possibly that would be all that it would say. So I think some of the projects we're seeing is companies realise they need to stand back from a very one-sided view of quality risk management to look at it both in terms of how can we do this across the project, across the quality, I suppose the PQS, and across, I suppose, in every way that a company is working. So whether it be capitals or deviations, looking at trending, looking at reports, that's quality risk management approach is needed. One aspect of that as well is that people need to kind of build the whole quality risk management side of things into the culture within the company. So we've actually not only worked on the technical aspects of risk management with people, but also how do you get people to think in a way that is appropriate from a risk management perspective. So take an adverse event happens on a factory floor or in the middle of a validation. You want the person to be able to stop and say, what happened, why did it happen? And to use some simple tools, either a whiteboard, a check sheet, like could be fishbone diagram, could be root cause analysis, to get to the hub of what that problem is. And whilst that's not seen these days as a formal risk assessment, it's inherent a lot of times in the way it's done, but it's just harnessing that and being able to capture it as a way of gathering more data.
Yeah, and we've actually seen an increase in the use of informal tools.
Oh yeah,
just like that. And a recognition that not everything in terms of documenting your risk analysis of a given situation and ultimately the impact of the event that you've just spoken about has to be done through a very complex formal risk methodology. And if you use an informal tool, whatever that might be, brainstorming, fishbone, fall tree, something simple, or a simple check sheet, the key thing, though, is to document it and to have your justification on record. Yeah.
And that's the whole point. And even, again, we've worked with quite a lot of companies who have started to use a frontline tool, and this can be a check sheet that's part of your batch record, or it could be a check sheet that's part of your protocol, validation protocol, cleaning protocol, and that works really, really well. So the quality risk management side of things is something that companies have embraced and are continuing to embrace, and that's something we're doing a lot of consultancy work on. The other area is the whole area of tech transfer, and with globalization, we are seeing such a move towards the emerging markets, which is fantastic. You've got kind of a wealth of companies and organisations ready to take products from Europe and the US. And to think of the figures going forward in the next maybe 5 years, over 50% of the products that will be hitting us globally will be coming from emerging markets. But with that comes the necessity to transfer products from A to B. Now, tech transfer in the past has been very much seen as the product. And if anything, actually, within tech transfer, the product aspect of it is actually the easiest part of it, because you have your well-documented SOPs, people have been trained, you have your batch record, you have all your data that you've had to collect and analyse as you go. But the parts that tend to be missed out on would be, again, to come back to the same theme of knowledge. The knowledge of the research and development, particularly with legacy products, and also the other aspects in terms of everything from your analytical to your stability, your safety, and everything that goes with it. Or even your, again, an incredibly hot topic at the moment is the whole area of supply chain management, and particularly with the false web evidence directive.
Okay, so that's very interesting, Alice. And I wonder, just on that theme of tech transfer, are you seeing any impetus within the companies to seek to implement continuous improvement, which is part of ICHQ10, when they have the opportunity to do so during a tech transfer?
Okay, that's a really good point, and I'm going to kind of tie it together with something else. Something we're seeing is not only wanting to look at the whole Q10 side of things, but also in terms of lean, operational excellence. And it's only in the last few years we're seeing all of those marrying together. Okay, so if you think that companies are trying to look at the way they're doing transfers and be able to use, I suppose, a combination of lean methodologies, lean tools, OpEx, along with some very simple check sheets. So the whole key with tech transfer is not to be, you don't have to have it terribly complex. You use a simple set of tools and simple methodology to do the transfer, and to have adequate stage gates going throughout the process of the tech transfer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's good to hear. And in terms of, you mentioned earlier, the PQS, the Pharmaceutical Quality System, which obviously commenced with ICHQ10 being published in 2008. And now, of course, here in Europe, we see it very much embedded in Chapter 1 of the EU GMPs. So what are your experiences of where companies are transitioning from their traditional quality management system into a more innovation-led and continuous improvement-led pharmaceutical quality system?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of effort going on this, and I suppose earlier on we talked about some of the issues, and some I suppose one of the issues that are facing companies in terms of trying to do this is they're sitting oftentimes in a corporate regulatory framework, and the change towards the PQS has to come from the top. So whilst that's the approach that a lot of the larger pharmas are taking, some of the companies that would be, I suppose, more independent from an affiliate perspective will undertake a Q10 gap assessment. We've been doing numerous of these, whereby each of the quality system elements are looked at in the context of Q10, but also in fact looked in the context in terms of Q8, Q9, Q10. And in terms of the overall continuing improvement, it's building into the updates a means to analyse trends, analyse data, and to see how can we continually improve, and what is the metric associated with that. And I think having a foundation and having some technical reason to be able to justify moving, or it could be anything from changing sampling regime to cutting out a particular process step or otherwise, there needs to be scientific data there to prove that. And I think the whole continuous improvement model needs to allow for the collection of data and the analysis of that, and the justification and proof that the process doesn't change with that change incorporated.
Okay, well that's excellent. And in terms of your role within the PDA Ireland chapter, as president of the PDA Ireland chapter, perhaps you can tell us about some initiatives or some moves that are going on there through PDA in Ireland.
Okay. The PDA has been very active in Ireland for the last, I suppose, 5-6 years. I suppose we have an event coming up next week. On the 11th of December, we have an event on with Dr. Hayama from Japan, who is on the ICHQ10 committee, and we're delighted to be having him to kind of, I suppose, have an afternoon of seminars with our regulators from the R&B and some industry speakers. So that's coming up. We have planned to have an event next year early on the supply chain management end of things, and Falsified Medicine Directive. And likewise, we would hope to do another combined event, as we have done before, with ISP, PCI, and other organisations.
Okay, that's great. So thank you so much for coming in to share your insights with us today, Alice. And I'm sure everybody at Pharma Mooc will have gained a level of knowledge from that. So for now, goodbye from Pharma Mooc, and we'll see you on the next series.